We've all been there where you buy a plant, you've got it sitting in its container on your patio in the summer, and then you miss a day or a week of watering and you find your plant has just turned crispy and crunchy. Not a good look for a plant. I'm Cameron, welcome back to the Busy Gardener channel. In this video, I'm gonna share with you 6 steps on how to evaluate and revive your dying plant. And at the end, I'm gonna give you a couple of key points to keep in mind. Let's get busy. I revived a plant of my own using these steps, and at the end of the video, I'm going to show you how it turned out, so stay tuned for that. Well, in my scenario here, I've got these 6 blueberry plants that I got, and I was going to plant up in the orchard to replace the ones that I let die up there. And they were sitting in this galvanized tub over the summer, and I was watering it, and they were doing wonderfully. And then there was an especially hot week. My wife thought I was watering them. I thought she was watering them. And guess who watered them? Nobody. And so I came out and found that they were dead. Turns out they're not dead though, they're only mostly dead.
There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead.
And I want to show you the difference between these things. The first step in reviving your plants is to find out if they're actually dead or only mostly dead. And I've got 3 examples here that are in various stages of being dead. This first one, looking for signs of life, is the most obvious. I mean, you see that there are green leaves here. You see that the branches are nice and bendy. That lets us know that there's still moisture and nutrients flowing through this system. And so this one is pretty obvious. This one is going to make it if we just water it a little bit and make sure that it's okay, get it planted. The next one is not as obvious. This one has a bunch of dieback on the top. It's got crispy leaves, branches that are brittle and dried out, but it also has green. And on a blueberry plant like this, it's easier to tell because the outside of the branch itself is green. On a tree or something like that, you might need to take and cut into one of the branches just to see what the inside is like. Is it supple or is it just dried out and brittle? So this is something that's only mostly dead. But then we've got this guy here. There are no signs of life. Every branch that I've got here is totally broken off. There's a ton of moisture still in here that lets us know that no moisture is being taken up into the system. This is heavier than the other ones. And so this one is dead. That one's gonna go straight into the compost. Step number 2 in reviving your dying plant is to diagnose the problem. With this one, I know what happened. It was hot. The sun was beating down on it and it didn't have enough water, and so I know that this was water stressed. But you want to pay attention. What caused the initial stress to begin with? Did you have it in the wrong spot? Did you have it out in the sun? Did you overwater it, which is not a good thing because those roots can sometimes drown? Did you underwater it where it just didn't have enough moisture to sustain itself? And so you want to pay attention to that, and here's why. If you successfully revive your plant, you don't want to make the same mistake that got you here in the first place. Overwatering, if you notice that there's a bunch of die-off, but that the soil is very, very moist, that gives you an idea that you're overwatering it. If you are underwatering it, you generally will see some dieback, but then it's going to be very light. If it's in a container, you're going to see the soil is very, very dry. So that will give you an idea that you need to water it. If you see that there's some scalding that's happened from the sun, and you can tell it's in a certain direction, you may want to whitewash your plant or move it into another location that isn't getting as intense a sun. And so you want to diagnose so that way you don't end up back at square one in a few months. Let's look at step number 3. Step 3 is to remove the dead leaves off of your plant. Now, on a blueberry, the leaves are attached to the branches, and so really I'm going to be removing these branches. But if you've got a plant that is really got these big showy leaves and any of those leaves are dead, you want to remove those, and that's going to help to revive your plant. Let's look at step number 4. Step number 4 is where you want to trim back your branches until you see green material. And on this blueberry, you see that there are some green stems that are going here, but then you also see a bunch of this crunchy stuff. And so we're going to be removing these branches using these Corona snips. These are nice for a smaller, thinner cut like this as opposed to a tree where you might need to use some pruning shears. And so I'm going to be looking back to where the brown part is gone and the green part starts. And ideally you're going to cut to above. One advantage of removing all of this canopy on the top is if your plant or tree has been stressed, this makes it so that the roots are able to reestablish themselves without having to maintain a bunch of this canopy up here. And so making difficult cuts like this are what need to happen. This looks pretty severe and crazy, and that's because it is. This has cut down most of the canopy. You see most of the material is removed, What this is going to allow the plant to do is to reestablish its rooting system below without the stress and overhead of having to maintain a canopy up here. What it also does is that it sends a signal down to the plant that it's time to make something happen with these buds. That's one nice thing about pruning plants, is that it sends a signal, these auxins they're called, and lets the plant know that it should start sending out these shoots. And so we're going to see what happens with this. In this case, on this blueberry, we see that we've got some stuff going on up here and then some scraggly things down here. Just as a pruning thing, I'm going to remove this dying branch here. I'm going to remove this dead one here. Now we've got a lot of imbalance here, and so I'm going to cut this down. This plant is a lot more balanced now and is going to allow it to grow and be in balance as it reemerges. We've done our pruning, we've done our trimming. Now we move to step number 5. And that is to wait a month. I want you to wait a month. You might begin to see new growth emerging after a week or 2 weeks, which is fantastic, but I don't want you to give up on your plant until you've waited a month if you're not seeing that growth, because some plants are just slower growing than others. And so wait an entire month. That brings us to step number 6. You've waited your month. Now step number 6 is to evaluate. You've taken your plant, you've done all these things to it. Now you need to look at it and look closely. Are there any signs of life? Or any of these buds actually sending off any type of growth? If your tree is dormant, if it's in the middle of the winter, you might have to wait till spring to make that determination. But you want to evaluate if this worked or not. And if it did, fantastic! You've resurrected your plant. But if it hasn't, after you shed your tear, you've done everything you can. You've given your plant the best shot it has, and it's time to make it into the compost pile. Okay, I want to give you 2 considerations to keep in mind when you're doing this type of thing. I have one do and one don't when it comes to reviving your plant. The do is, if you have a plant in a small container that it's not its eventual container, like this is made to be planted in a much larger container, or maybe you've got a tree that's going to go in the ground or a bush or something like that, take and plant that thing. These plants are happiest when they're in their eventual container. This is such a small system size. It has to be watered so frequently because it can only hold so much. So these really need to go get in the ground right away. So do plant your plant straight away. The don't is don't fertilize your plant when you're in this waiting period until after you've seen maybe an inch of growth emerge from your plant. Fertilizing can make the tree do really weird stuff and expend a bunch of resources to create a lot of vigor, and you don't want it to artificially create vigor. You want it to reestablish itself, and sometimes fertilizing can hamper that. So you want to fertilize only after you've seen a little bit of growth, at least an inch of growth on your plant, depending on what it is. Okay, I've got this ever-bearing mulberry that I did this on a month ago, and let's go see how it's doing. Now is a great time to hit that subscribe button, the like button, and hit that join button to see what kind of perks might be available to you as a Busy Gardener member. Thank you for those who are already members of the Busy Gardener channel. I appreciate you. Well, this ever-bearing mulberry was in exactly the same spot as those blueberries were, same kind of situation, and I watered it. I cut these branches back to where there was green and growing material, and look at these things that have grown out, everything budded out, and it's looking fantastic. I planted it in its eventual location, and we can't wait for this to fill up this part of our yard. This corner of the yard is going to have these beautiful, tasty berries growing year-round. Well, I appreciate you tuning into this episode of the Busy Gardener channel. Hopefully this has given you some courage to resurrect and revive your dying plants. Leave a comment below. Let me know how that worked for you. Have you had any success with this? Anyway, whether you've got one plant that needs reviving in your yard, 500, till next time, stay busy.